Listen, this part is highly dramatic. Danny was about to speak when the warning light took him, while the professor sniffed in the hallway. He wouldn't actually let Jimway go easy on Danny, would he? Danny returned to shoot, but got no welcome from the inmates, like he crashed in an anti-party. Instead, Jimway cheered Danny's arrival. Peter asked, "Can't we cancel this ridiculous contract?" Danny said the contract's like trash, won't let anyone go. It's true, absolutely. True, absolutely no one can leave. It's like being stuck in a comedy, and Danny completely lost it. What he said shocked everyone. Danny strutted to the camera wall, ready to put on a show, sparing no effort. He was yelling and kicking the wall like he was trying to order takeout for it. "You shouldn't hit my hand, absolutely shouldn't. I'm gonna smash this camera and spank you bottom, let me out now." Seeing Danny about to explode, tonight is the first time the professor is spending the night at home. His student took it upon themselves to let Danny out, and when the professor found out the next day, he was utterly flabbergasted. He was friendly with all involved in the experiment. Yesterday's military intelligence was serious. Danny faked madness to leave funny. Now catching Danny seems unlikely, so the professor started discussing his quick escape. One researcher suggested it might be because there's no sunlight in the cell, so no sleep. These inmates lost track of time entirely. His only weakness is not daring to resist, so of course he got sliced. He wanted to control even just one inmate, but authority was just a big joke. The professor understood the researcher's perspective. Danny is purely profit-driven. What crashed Danny was indeed himself. Since the current situation can't be undone, the professor devised a do-nothing solution for students to inform the inmates. They said Danny was locked in top-tier prison for causing chaos, and it just so happens today is the visiting day for inmates' families. Seeing families boosted prisoners' mood, ashamed or for money, they said it was not bad. The professor was tense. After sending off the inmates' families, he sensed tonight's going to bring even more trouble since Danny's past promises weren't simple. Danny vowed to bring back help once free, so the professor sat in the hallway with a chair. Tonight, he was there to keep watch, but in the end, he just sat there all night doing nothing. By day 4, frequent warnings left inmates without a sense of time. Danny had been gone 5 or 6 days. What was once eager anticipation turned into boiling anger. Peter's cell didn't even have a. Just thinking of Danny living it up outside while they had to work made Peter ready to lose his lunch. To ease the inmates' moods, the professor brought in a priest to act as a psychological consultant, discussing their futures. Peter was shocked by the priest's words, yelling, "Isn't this just an experiment?" The professor comforted Peter, but secretly told his subordinates Peter was uncooperative. Hearing the outside voices repeating his words, Peter broke down, hugging his head and crying out loud. He insisted he was a good guy who never hurt chickens. Everything outside was false, but the professor calmly nodded, saying he knew. The professor told Peter to drop out from the inmates' circle, but when he left, it raised a researcher's eyebrow. Why could Peter leave? The professor thought Peter's stress resistance had its limits. As a failed experiment, he had to be let go usually. Jokes end here. After they left, the professor brought in a guy named David to fill the spot, but seeing the changes around him, David rejected such inhumane treatment. So the guards threw David into the slammer and tossed a sausage on the floor. "If you don't eat that sausage, you'll be stuck here till you croak." The inmates had been in prison for 5 long days. The professor hadn't returned home for several days, prompting concern from his wife Helen, who came to inquire about his well-being. And it just so happened that Gray arrived at this moment to request parole from the professor. Helen stood by, silently eavesdropping on Gray's hilarious, quirky conversation. "I've come to believe him an inmate, and I've gotten used to the guard's unfair treatment. He had only been in prison for 5 days, after all. He really wished to celebrate his birthday in prison, only to reject the idea. He wanted to have a birthday celebration for himself, but was simply too scared. Gray firmly believed that everyone had to pay for their actions, Yet the stuck-in-grave crimes longed for redemption and repentance within prison walls. The professor's wife, Helen, watched Black's act with an increasing sense of absurdity. Helen and Gray attacked each other, and his eyes were filled with tears. Gray's request was naturally denied. Before Gray was taken, Helen asked if he'd give up $500 daily for freedom. Gray nodded in agreement without hesitation, and after he left, everyone dove into heated discussion. Old Black was bored. As someone who had truly been in prison, he knew the feeling all too well and chose to leave. He had no intention of telling anyone what he said to Gray today. The researchers also noted the professor knew he was experimenting on others. Researchers felt continuing the experiment was unnecessary. Everyone knew the outcome. Sticking it out held no meaning. After the shift finished, John learned the new inmate had spent a day in isolation for refusing to eat the sausage on the floor.